Hello everyone and welcome. Today we're diving into the Lake Isle of Innisfree by the Irish poet William Butler Yeats. This poem is a beautiful escape into nature and peace, written during a time of busy city life and inner yearning. As we go through the poem, we'll explore its meaning, imagery, and emotional impact, and hopefully you'll come to love it as much as so many others do. Let's begin by learning a bit more about the poet and the world that inspired his work. William Butler Yeats, born in Dublin in 1865, was a towering figure in the 20th century literature. Though he spent much of his youth in both London and Sligo, it was the natural beauty of country Sligo that left a lasting impression on his imagination and inspired much of his work. As a poet and playwright, Yeats was dedicated to promoting Irish culture and identity through art. His writing blends rich symbolism with Irish folklore and nationalistic ideals. In 1923, Yeats received the Nobel Prize in Literature, recognized for poetry that gave artistic voice to the spirit of a nation. Over time, his style evolved from lyrical romanticism to a more modern, reflective tone. One of his earliest and most well-loved poems, The Lake Isle of Innisfree, was inspired by a childhood memory of a real island on Lough Gill, a place that became for him a symbol of peace and escape. Let's now listen to the poem, The Lake Isle of Innisfree by William Butler Yeats. As you hear the words, try to picture the calm and beauty of the island he describes. The Lake Isle of Innisfree. I will arise and go now and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin built there of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement grey, I hear it in the deep heart's core. The Lake Isle of Innisfree is one of Yeats' most famous poems and was first published in 1890. It paints a vivid picture of the speaker's deep yearning to escape the chaos of city life and find peace in nature. In the poem, the speaker dreams of living alone on a quiet, uninhabited island called Innisfree, a real place in country Sligo, Ireland. There, he imagines building a small cabin from natural materials like clay and twigs. He wants to live simply, growing his own food and being surrounded by the sounds of nature, like buzzing bees, the gentle lap of the lake, and the stillness of misty mornings. Yeats wrote this poem while living in the smoke and noise of London. One day, while walking along Fleet Street, he heard the sound of a water fountain in a shop window. That sound reminded him of the lake from his childhood holidays in Sligo, and it sparked this poem. The speaker's longing goes beyond just missing a place. Innisfree becomes a symbol of inner peace, spiritual fulfillment, and harmony with nature. Even though he's stuck in the city, the memory of Innisfree lives in his deep heart's core. It represents a powerful human desire, the wish to return to something real, simple, and healing in the natural world. Let's explore some of the key vocabulary Yeats used to bring his vision of Innisfree vividly to life. In the Lake Isle of Innisfree, Yeats used simple yet carefully chosen vocabulary that creates a calm and peaceful atmosphere. The words are mostly natural and evocative, helping the reader picture the quiet beauty of the island and the speaker's longing for solitude. The style is reflective and lyrical, with a gentle rhythm that matches the poem's soothing mood. Yeats' diction is formal but accessible, blending everyday language with poetic imagery. For example, he uses words like "be loud glade" and "midnight's all a glimmer," which are descriptive but not overly complex. Understanding the meaning of each word in the Lake Isle of Innisfree is very important because Yeats chooses his vocabulary carefully to create strong images and feelings. Every word adds to the peaceful, dreamlike mood and helps you connect with the speaker's desire for escape and rest. To study the vocabulary effectively, try breaking down the poem line by line and looking up any unfamiliar words. Write down their meanings and practice using them in your own sentences. This will help you remember the words better and understand how they contribute to the poem's overall meaning. Also, think about how the words sound when you read them aloud. This can reveal the mood and tone Yeats wants to create. Now that we've looked at the vocabulary, let's move on to the type and structure of the poem. Type and structure of the poem. The Lake Isle of Innisfree is a lyrical poem, written in the first person. A lyrical poem expresses the speaker's personal thoughts and emotions, often in a musical or flowing way. This style allows Yeats to share his deep longing for peace and simplicity. It is also a pastoral poem because it focuses on the beauty of nature and idolizes a peaceful rural life away from the city. The poem has 3 stanzas, each made up of 4 lines called quatrains. Each stanza is one complete sentence with a semicolon after the second line, dividing the sentences into 2 parts. Most lines are end-stopped, meaning ending with punctuation, except for line 9, which runs over into the next line. This use of enjambment shows the speaker's ongoing desire to escape to Innisfree. The rhyme scheme is A-B, A-B, C-D, C-D, E-F, E-F, and the poem has a loosely iambic rhythm, which means it often follows a natural, gentle beat that suits the calming mood. The poem is structured in 3 parts. In the first stanza, the speaker imagines how he will build a peaceful life on the island. In the second stanza, he describes the magical, calming atmosphere he would experience there. In the third stanza, we learn that the speaker is still in the city, but his heart longs for Innisfree. This careful structure supports the poem's themes of longing, escape, and inner peace. Now that we understand the structure of the poem, let's explore the tone and mood Yeats creates through his words and imagery. The tone of the poem is calm, peaceful, and reflective. The speaker expresses a deep emotional longing to escape the busy city and return to a quieter, more natural life. The repetition of the word peace highlights his feeling, showing that the speaker is yearning for inner calm and completeness. The mood created in the poem is joyful and soothing at first, especially when the speaker imagines living in harmony with nature. However, there's also a sense of wishfulness and disappointment, because the peaceful life he dreams about is not his reality. It remains a beautiful but unreachable idea. This balance between joy and longing gives the poem its emotional depth and makes the reader reflect on their own desire for peace. Beyond tone and mood, Yeats also uses symbols throughout the poem to represent deeper ideas and emotions. Let's examine a few of them more closely. In the Lake Isle of Innisfree, symbolism plays a crucial role in expressing the speaker's desire for a more meaningful existence. Each image carries a deeper message about life, nature, and the soul. Firstly, Innisfree itself symbolizes more than just a location. It represents inner peace, spiritual fulfillment, and the longing for a simpler, more connected life. The island becomes a personal paradise, untouched by the stress and chaos of the modern world. For the speaker, it is a metaphor of freedom of the soul, echoing the romantic ideal that one finds peace not in society but in nature. The cabin of clay and wattles made symbolizes this simplicity. It suggests self-sufficiency and humility, drawing on traditional Irish rural imagery. The speaker does not wish for grandeur or luxury. Instead, a humble dwelling in harmony with the land is enough to fulfill him. This image connects to Yeats' own interest in Celtic mysticism and Irish nationalism, using natural, rustic images to reflect identity and peace. Light, throughout mentioned briefly, is highly symbolic. Midnight's flickering light and noon's purple glow reflects nature's timeless beauty and quiet rhythm. Light in literature often symbolizes truth and spiritual awareness, and here it may hint at the enlightenment the speaker hopes to attain away from city life. Finally, the roadway and pavement's grey are stark contrasts to the serenity of Innisfree. These symbols reflect urban alienation, dullness, and emotional emptiness. The color grey intensifies this bleakness, suggesting a world drained of life and wonder. Together, these symbols enrich the emotional core of the poem. They give us a clear contrast between the natural and the artificial, the peaceful and the restless, the spiritual and the superficial. Now that we've unpacked the deeper meaning behind the poem's symbols, let's take a closer look at the poem's title and why Yeats may have chosen it so deliberately. The title of the poem, The Lake Isle of Innisfree, refers to a real place, a tiny, uninhabited island in Lough Gill in County Sligo, Ireland. This is where Yeats spent many of his childhood summers, and the island left a deep and lasting impression on him. It became more than just a holiday memory. It became a symbol of peace, solitude, and the spiritual nourishment he longed for in adult life. But within the poem, Innisfree is more than just a location. It represents an ideal, a place of perfect harmony with nature, a deep inner peace, far from the bustle and phoniness of modern urban life. This is a dream space, untouched, silent, and free. In fact, the word free in Innisfree seems to emphasize the speaker's longing for emotional and spiritual freedom. The name Innisfree itself means island of heather, and heather is a hardy plant with soft purple flowers, subtly linking the title to the poem's purple imagery and natural palette. Although the speaker yearns to return and live simply on Innisfree, alone in the bee-loud glade, we begin to see in a sense that his return may not be possible. The island has become more of a memory or even a symbol of a state of mind than a realistic destination. The pool of the city and its pavements grey keeps him physically rooted in urban life, even though his spirit quietly wanders back to the island. Next, we'll take a look at the main themes of the poem, including this idea of longing, peace, and nature's healing power. Let's begin by exploring three central themes in the Lake Isle of Innisfree: the harmony between man and nature, the peace and tranquility that nature offers, and the speaker's strong longing for escape. Firstly, the poem contrasts the natural world with modern urban life. The speaker feels that nature provides a kind of harmony and balance that civilization lacks. While the city represents routine, noise, and artificial living, Innisfree represents something much deeper, a place of rest, renewal, and personal freedom. This ties into the second theme, the peacefulness of nature. The imagery of the bee-loud glade and midnights all aglimmer creates a soft, calming mood. Nature is not just beautiful, it's restorative. It offers emotional and spiritual peace that modern life cannot. Finally, Yeats explores the speaker's longing to escape from the city. There's a powerful emotional pull towards the simple, rural life he once knew. His statement, "I will arise and go now," sounds like a definite decision, but as we learn in the final stanza, he's still physically stuck in the city, standing on pavements grey. This tension between desire and reality reflects a deep human wish to find meaning beyond daily pressures. Beyond peace and escape, the poem also raises questions about the spiritual value of nature and how it stands in contrast to the world of civilization, themes we'll explore next. The next two key themes of the poem are nature and spirituality, and the contrast between nature and civilization. The speaker doesn't just want to live in nature for its beauty. He sees it as a place of spiritual renewal. The rhythm of the natural world, the buzzing of bees, the shifting of light, the early morning dew, becomes almost sacred. In this way, Yeats presents nature as a place that offers a deep connection to something greater than ourselves. It's where the speaker believes his soul can be nourished and his mind calmed. The final theme we'll discuss is the poem's contrast between nature and civilization. This is expressed through imagery. Pavements grey stand in sharp contrast to the colors and softness of Innisfree. The speaker is clearly disillusioned with modern life, its speed, its artificiality, and its disconnection from the natural world. His idealized vision of Innisfree highlights how the rush of civilization can lead to spiritual emptiness, while nature offers a more meaningful way to life. Now that we've explored the deeper ideas behind the poem, we'll move on to the line-by-line analysis. But before we look at the poem line by line, let's talk about how we approach poetry like this, especially when it comes to analysis in an exam setting. Line-by-line analysis means that we look closely at each line of the poem to unpack its meaning, tone, and possible literary devices. But here's the key. We're not claiming that we know exactly what the poet meant, unless the poet has explained it themselves, which Yeats did in some cases, but we make educated guesses based on evidence in the poem. This is called inference. So, how do we do that? We read the line carefully and we ask, what is the literal meaning? Are there any figurative meanings like metaphors or symbolism? How does this line connect to the rest of the poem? What words stand out? Are they positive or negative? Peaceful or urgent? When we analyze, we also consider the context of the poet. For example, Yeats' longing for nature and his Irish background. The tone and mood is the line calm, excited, sad, nostalgic, and the poetic devices are the alliteration, assonance, imagery, metaphor, repetition, etc. It is important to remember, poetry is open to interpretation. There can be more than one correct answer, as long as you can back it up with evidence. Don't just say what's happening. Explain why it matters or how it contributes to the message of the poem. When studying, always read the whole poem a few times first, then break it into manageable sections. For exams, don't try to memorize an essay. Rather make summary notes line by line, highlight poetic devices, and practice explaining each line in your own words. You won't be expected to interpret every line, but understanding the key lines well can help you score higher in poetry questions. Now that we know how to tackle poetry line by line, let's look at the first part of the poem and unpack what it means. In the first stanza, the speaker firmly expresses his determination to leave the busy city and go to Innisfree. The repeated use of the word go in the opening line emphasizes his urgency and strong intention. He imagines building a small, simple cabin on the island, living completely by himself. The personal pronoun I highlights his desire for solitude and independence. The materials he chooses for his cabin, clay and wattles, and the simple plans to grow 9 bean rows and keep a beehive suggest a humble, self-sufficient lifestyle close to nature. Interestingly, while he longs to live alone, he welcomes the company of bees, which are social creatures living in a large colony. This contrast adds depth to his vision of peaceful isolation. Next, we will begin our detailed line-by-line analysis starting with line 1. Line 1. I will arise and go now. The phrase echoes the parable of the prodigal son in Luke 15 verse 18, who left home, wasted his inheritance, but eventually decided to return. This biblical allusion suggests the speaker's own feeling of homesickness and desire to leave a chaotic life behind. Like the prodigal son, the speaker feels trapped in an unhappy or intolerable situation and longs to return to a place of peace and simplicity, Innisfree. The biblical connection also implies a spiritual bond with Innisfree, where the speaker hopes to find deep peace, almost like a religious experience. The phrase shows the speaker's strong determination and conviction. The use of will, not shall, underlines the urgency. He wants to escape immediately, even though this is still a daydream rather than an actual action. The verb arise suggests more than just physically getting up. It hints at a spiritual awakening or a moral return to goodness, just as the prodigal son rises to return home. The repetition of this line later in the poem reinforces the speaker's intense desire to leave and find freedom. Innisfree here is a powerful symbol, an idealized place of nature and tranquility, embodying spiritual fulfillment that contrasts with the oppressive city life. It is important to note that Innisfree is partly a state of mind or a dream, a temporary mental escape from the harshness of urban life. Despite the speaker's longing, The island itself is a real small uninhabited place near Sligo, with rough terrain mostly covered by trees and shrubs. Not exactly ideal for farming or building, highlighting the idealized nature of his vision. Line 2. And a small cabin built there, of clay and wattles made. The speaker expresses his wish to build a small cabin in the traditional, simple way, using a framework of thin sticks woven over thicker poles and sealed with clay and wattles, mud. The use of inversion in the line and a small cabin built there instead of and built a small cabin there places emphasis on the small size and modesty of the cabin, highlighting the speaker's desire for simplicity. The word there contrasts with his current location, the noisy city, underscoring his longing for the peace of Innisfree. The alliteration of the C sound in cabin and clay draws attention to these words and emphasizes the rustic, pastoral nature of his dream home. The repeated use of and at the start of this line and others, line 4, 5, and 8, is an example of polysyndeton, which slows down the rhythm and mirrors the slow, careful process of building a simple life. The consonancy, the repetition of consonant sounds like C, B, N, H, and L, and assonancy, vowel sounds A and E, in these lines create a musical effect that reflects the harmony with nature the speaker desires. The cabin symbolizes a simple, meditative life, one of thoughtful, humble labor in tune with nature. The line suggests the speaker's readiness to invest time and effort in creating this meaningful, peaceful life away from the city. Next, we will analyze line 3 and 4 and its significance. Lines 3 and 4. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. The speaker describes his envisioned life on Innisfree as self-sufficient and in harmony with nature. He plans to cultivate 9 rows of beans and keep a beehive to produce honey. The bean rose symbolizes growth, patience, and harmony. Biblically, the number 9 represents completeness and finality, suggesting the speaker's desire to find his core whole self. The bean's upward growth also symbolizes resurrection or spiritual renewal. The beehive is a symbol of sweetness, abundance, and blessing. Bees are vital for pollination and life, and the biblical reference to a land of milk and honey evokes freedom and promise. The repetition of and at the start of line 4 continues the list of peaceful, simple tasks the speaker plans on the island. It also highlights his determination and the gradual building of his dream. The phrase live alone shows the speaker's strong craving for solitude, clearly rejecting the busy noise of city life. The image of the bee-loud glade refers to a quiet forest clearing where the buzzing of bees is loud and constant, emphasizing the peaceful yet lively environment he longs for. The alliteration of the L sound in live alone reinforces the solitude and quiet he seeks. The H alliteration in hive and honey bee imitates the droning sounds of bees, an example of onomatopoeia. There is an irony here. The speaker desires silence and solitude, but prefers the noisy buzzing of bees, which survive and thrive in large social colonies. Overall, These lines symbolize the speaker's wish for a simple, meditative life that is deeply connected to nature and spiritual growth. Next, we will look at a summary of stanza 2 to see how these images develop further. Summary of stanza 2. The speaker imagines the pastoral tranquility of Innisfree and expresses a deep longing for the peace he believes he will find there. This atmosphere of quiet contentment is envisioned to last both day and night, enriched by the natural sounds and sights of the island. The main benefit of staying on Innisfree is peace, which is emphasized by the repetition of the word peace throughout the stanza. Peace is linked to the image of morning dew dropping from the leaves onto the grass, suggesting a fresh, calm, and nurturing environment. The speaker describes different times of day, each with extraordinary qualities at Innisfree, using imagery to highlight how important this daydream is to him. Lines 5 and 6. The speaker shifts from future tense shall have to present tense comes, imagining himself already in Innisfree. The second stanza opens affirming the speaker's need for solitude and inner peace, which he believes Innisfree offers abundantly. Repetition of peace highlights the speaker's deep longing for continuous calm, from morning till night, symbolized by the cricket's song. The word some suggests more peace than he currently experiences. The verb drop implies peace descending gently and steadily, as if from heaven, emphasizing a slow but sure arrival. Repetition of dropping reinforces the soothing, constant nature of this peace. Veils of the morning is a metaphor for early morning mist covering the island like a veil. It may also be personified as morning wearing a veil, possibly for religious or protective reasons. Cricket sing personifies the cricket, symbolizing good luck and prosperity, tying to the spiritual peace the speaker desires. Crickets are mostly nocturnal, marking the peacefulness from dawn to night. The mood is calm, musical, and sleepy, evoking slow, gentle peace spreading like morning mist. The stanza moves from concrete images to metaphorical language, describing spiritual fulfillment gradually arriving on Innisfree. The peace the speaker seeks is not immediate, but will settle over time, coming from nature's divine wisdom. This peace contrasts with the speaker's current urban life, where such calmness cannot be created or controlled. Lines 7 and 8. The opening word there firmly locates the speaker's imagination on Innisfree, creating a clear spatial and emotional separation from the city where he currently stands. Midnight is all a glimmer. Glimmer suggests a faint, wavering light that gently illuminates the night, describing a serene moonlit scene where stars twinkle softly. This imagery evokes a tranquil nocturnal atmosphere, contrasting with the harsh artificial light and noise of the city. Purple glow refers to the vivid, steady radiance of the sun at midday, possibly reflecting the purple heather plants native to the island. Purple is symbolically linked to royalty, spirituality, and richness, suggesting the island's majestic and almost sacred quality. The stanza's soundscape is delicate and calm. The soft flutter of the linnet's wings at dusk indicates the peaceful close of the day. Notably, Yeats chooses to highlight the quiet wing movements over bird song, emphasizing the profound silence and stillness that pervades Innisfree. The repeated G sound in glimmer and glow create a soothing musical effect, mirroring the natural harmony the speaker longs for. The stanza presents a rhythmic contrast of time of day, from the darkness of midnight to the bright purple noon, and finally to the calm evening, symbolizing the passage of time in a natural cycle, unlike the hectic pace of city life. Let's look at light as a symbol. Light traditionally embodies truth, clarity, and spiritual awakening. Here, the changing light represents the speaker's gradual enlightenment and the transition from urban chaos to peaceful rural life. Midday's purple glow may symbolize the peak of spiritual illumination, marking the speaker's hopeful transformation. The overall mood is one of quiet awe and respect for nature's beauty and its healing power. This stanza shifts from concrete imagery to more symbolic and sensory language, inviting the reader to feel the island's tranquil atmosphere as part of the speaker's spiritual journey. Next, we will summarize stanza 3 and explore how the poem concludes the speaker's daydream. By the third stanza, the poem reveals the speaker's actual physical location, a large bustling city characterized by busy roads and grey pavements. This starkly contrasts with the idyllic peaceful setting of Innisfree that dominates the first two stanzas. The speaker shakes himself out of the daydream and acknowledges his current environment, grounding the poem in reality after the earlier vivid imagination of the island. This shift highlights the tension between the desire for escape and the inescapability of his urban life. Despite this physical distance, Innisfree still exists in the deep heart's core of the speaker, signifying that the longing for peace and simplicity is deeply embedded within his soul or innermost being. The phrase deep heart's core is powerful. It emphasizes that this yearning is not superficial but central to his identity and emotional well-being. The sounds he hears, the waves lapping on the shore, are no longer just mental images, but are felt deeply and emotionally, suggesting the intensity of his connection to the island. The repetition of the intention to go to Innisfree reinforces the speaker's determination and hope, but it also underscores the gap between desire and reality. He is still far from the peace he seeks. The imagery of roads and pavements in the city symbolizes the artificial, hard, and alienating environment from which the speaker wants to escape. It contrasts sharply with the natural, soft, and soothing landscape of Innisfree. The poem ends on a serious and somewhat sober tone. The dream of peace remains just out of reach, leaving the reader uncertain whether the speaker will ever truly find the tranquility he craves. This ending creates a sense of longing mixed with melancholy, highlighting a universal human tension between the demands of modern life and the inborn desire for spiritual and emotional restoration in nature. So far, we've explored the speaker's imagined life on the island. Now, as the poem nears its end, the speaker returns to the present moment. In line 9, the speaker repeats his resolve from the first line, "I will arise and go now." This repetition ties the poem together neatly, giving it a sense of circular structure or resolution. However, by ending the poem in the same place it began, it also suggests something more melancholic, that the speaker has not actually gone to Innisfree. This creates an underlying tone of sadness or nostalgia. He says he hears the sound of the lake water, soft, lapping, rhythmic, always night and day. This sound, though imagined, is so persistent that it acts like a call, pulling him towards the island. The phrase, "I hear it in the deep heart's core," suggests a deep emotional longing. This is no passing fantasy, but something he feels at his very center. Note the enjambment between lines 9 and 10. There is no punctuation, so the thought spills over breathlessly. This mimics the speaker's urgency and desperate yearning to escape to the peaceful island. Line 10 is also rich in sound devices. The soft L and S sounds, lake water lapping with low sounds, create a musical, calming effect. These sounds mimic the natural rhythm of water gently hitting the shore. This is an example of onomatopoeia, where the sound of the word reflects the sound described. It helps the reader to hear what the speaker hears, even though in reality this sound only exists in his imagination. In this way, the auditory imagery becomes a metaphor for the speaker's ongoing emotional pull towards Innisfree. He hasn't physically gone there, but the thought of it is always with him, quietly echoing in his mind. Some readers also note an allusion to the prodigal son in the Bible in Luke 15, who returns to a place of peace and forgiveness. This adds to the idea of Innisfree being a spiritual homecoming, a return to simplicity, purity, and peace. Ultimately, these final lines show that Innisfree may be an ideal rather than a physical destination, something the speaker yearns for, but which remains out of reach. We now come to the final two lines of the poem, and to the speaker's true location, which starkly contrasts with the peaceful natural world he has been imagining. In these closing lines, the speaker stands on the roadway or on the pavement grey. This is the first clear indication of where he really is, not on Innisfree, but in the city. These urban images represent the harsh realities of modern life: overcrowding, noise, pollution, and emotional disconnection. The phrase pavement grey is particularly bleak. The inversion of normal word order here emphasizes this dull, lifeless atmosphere, so unlike the vibrancy of Innisfree. The use of metonymy or synecdoche, using roadway and pavements to represent the whole of urban life, reinforces the idea that modern civilization stands in direct opposite to nature and inner peace. Throughout the poem, Innisfree has only ever been described as there, distant, elsewhere, imagined. The speaker's return to reality in these final lines reveals a tension. Though he longs for peace and spiritual clarity, he is trapped in a life that offers neither. This creates an antithesis, a striking contrast between the grimness of city life and the idealized serenity of the island. But the speaker's longing hasn't gone away. In fact, it intensifies. He says he still hears the sound of the lake water. I hear it in the deep heart's core. This auditory image is not literal. He doesn't hear it with his ears, but with his soul. The phrase suggests a deep emotional and even spiritual connection to Innisfree. And because heart already implies one's emotional center, the repetition in deep heart's core implies that this longing exists at the very core of his identity. This final line also links back to stanza 2, where Innisfree was described in almost divine terms. Here it becomes clear, Innisfree isn't just a place. It is a symbol of everything the speaker longs for: peace, simplicity, and spiritual fulfillment. The soft consonants in this line, especially the L and S sound, create a gentle rhythm that mirrors the lapping of waves. This soothing musical quality mirrors the natural world the speaker yearns for and emphasizes the mystical, almost otherworldly tone of the poem. In conclusion, the poem ends with a sense of quiet sadness. The speaker's longing is real, but Innisfree seems out of reach, perhaps existing only in his imagination. Yet, its impact is undeniable. It resonates deeply, shaping his thoughts, his dreams, and even his sense of self. Now that we've explored the Lake Isle of Innisfree in detail, let's turn our attention to possible exam questions. These questions are based on what you've just learned, and they will help you test your understanding and prepare for the final exam. You're welcome to pause the video now and try to answer each question on your own. Don't worry, the answers will be provided on the next slide, so you'll be able to mark your own work and reflect on any areas you still find confusing. Here are a few tips on analyzing questions. Read the question carefully. Make sure you understand exactly what it's asking. Underline the key words in the question. Look for action verbs like discuss, explain, analyze, or describe. Look at the mark allocation. It will guide you on how much detail to give. A 1-mark question usually needs 1 solid point. A 3-mark question needs more depth and examples. When you answer your questions, remember to always refer back to the poem. Even if it's a personal question, make sure your answer is still grounded in the poem. This shows the examiner that you understand the poem's message and how it's conveyed. When you're ready, move on to the next slide for the rest of the answers. Here are the last few answers, questions 8 to 10. Remember, these are model answers, which means they show you the kind of thinking and details that examiners are looking for. But your own words are always welcome as long as your answers are accurate and well supported. Pay close attention to how each answer gives a clear response and then backs it up with evidence from the poem. That's exactly what you should aim for in your own answers. If your answer is different, don't panic. Check if your reasoning makes sense and is supported by the poem. That's what matters most. And that brings us to the end of our journey to the Lake Isle of Innisfree. No need for a ferry, just a bit of imagination and focus. Hopefully, a little more understanding and a lot less confusion. Thanks for sticking with it. Now go have a cup of tea. Stare out of the window like a poet and let your brain rest a bit. You've earned it.